Hey. When we get by, we'll make it by. We'll get by. I look in your eyes, I look in your eyes. Nothing. It's a beautiful day. Welcome to stay. Sip some matinee. Hey, yeah. We'll be fine and we'll make it by. We'll get by in love. We'll make it by. We'll make it by in love. We'll make it by. We'll make it by. All right. How is everyone doing? You know, I have to come in and give you all my intro. Today we're listening to some D'Angelo, jamming and vibing to his first album. I look in your eyes, pretty like the stars. Everything, 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 everything is okay. Sip some chocolate lemonade. It's so fine and day's fine and we'll be fine. Oh, we'll make it fine. We get by. Yeah. I hope you all are well. It is a beautiful Monday here. The sun has been shining all weekend long, and I can tell you that I am so grateful. Oh my gosh, it's like the weather has been just so dry lately, and like it affects us, and I know it affects me. So if it affects me, I'm sure it affects other people. So I just want to welcome you all and invite you to, you know, sing and dance in the sun and get loose and all those wonderful, great things. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Odessa, and I am a womb wellness coach. Today, I want to talk with you all about how to overcome dysfunction and create a healthy response to issues of infertility. I have my notes here. I'm going to be referring to them. Please feel free to share this with 2 to 3 friends who you think can use this information. I would love it if you interact with me. Send me hearts, comment, and post. If you're watching the replay, #replay. Let me know that you're here and we are about to jump in. Good afternoon to you as well. So, how to overcome dysfunction and create a healthy response to issues of illness, but specifically to infertility, as that is the specialty that I'm working with. And so oftentimes, you know, we're going to the doctors, right? That's the first place that we're going when we have a problem. We go there to get their expertise, to get information from them, to understand what's happening to us. And we might, you know, go to multiple doctors. You might visit multiple specialists, you know, especially if you've been dealing with your issue and it's becoming a chronic problem, right? Where oftentimes, especially if it's an issue of infertility, you feel as though you're racing against time, right? You feel as though, hey, thank you for that, love. You feel as though you're racing against time. You feel as though, you know, everything is against you and you just have to get things done right away. Another thing that women are often doing and couples are often doing is that they start having sex all of the time, right? It's like, okay, well, we have to get pregnant this cycle. We have to get pregnant the next cycle. We have to try. We have to just keep on going. Okay, well, I'm ovulating. Okay, well, my temperature has dropped, so it's time. Okay, well, my cervical fluid is telling me this, and so it's time. And so you get into that place of angst and anxiety. You know, another thing that starts to happen, you know, is that searching online, you're searching all over the place for the answers to your questions, right? Like, why am I not getting pregnant? What's happening specifically with my condition? What are the things that I can do to create a better environment for my body to thrive, to be able to conceive? How can I, you know, help my follicles to develop, you know, healthy healthy follicles so that, I can ovulate and I can have a healthy egg that will be able to conceive the baby of my dreams. These are the concerns that a lot of people are experiencing, a lot of women are experiencing. Then there's, you're looking online and you're finding all of these different gurus and all of these different health knowledge, people who are knowledgeable on health, and then you have health practitioners. And so there's a combination of things there. There are people who know exactly what they're talking about and who have spent many, many years and maybe even decades perfecting their craft. And then you also have people who have learned a couple of things, over a weekend or a couple of courses. And I'm not putting them down, because knowledge is key and knowledge is powerful. But, once especially when you're in a place of vulnerability, you have to be really careful about where you're getting that information from, right? And so what happens is you change your soap and you're trying the douches and you're, taking the medication that the doctor is giving you and you're trying this new superfood and someone else said, don't do this. And so you're kind of piecemealing these things together, right, to figure out what the best combination is for you and for your body and for your reproductive system to work effectively, right? And getting these little bits of information from people, it can feel as though you're filling the gap because it may have worked for someone, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work for you. And another thing that I see, and I have these conversations with people about women and couples, is that, you start talking a lot about your situation to people. And so you're allowing the people around you to know that you're going through this situation. And you want to speak with anyone who is able to hear you, anyone who, gives you a listening ear, anyone who has a sympathetic heart, an empathetic heart, right? And so these are the things that, people are engaging in. Most of my clients and the conversations that I'm having with prospects on the phone, these are the things that I see them doing. And by you're doing all this research, and you're doing all of the things to gather, to create this toolbox, this pastiche of methods and protocols that you're going to piecemeal together. And in the middle of that, you're thinking to yourself, well, my body is broken. Is my body broken? Is something wrong with me? Am I the one who is creating the problem? Am I the one who is creating this issue of infertility, right? And that's not the whole truth. It's not the whole truth, but it can look like that, right? Especially when you're coming from that place of frustration, when you're coming from that place of angst, trying to do all of these things. You don't think that your body is working for you every single day. You don't recognize that, your body is functioning and that this sign of dysfunction is healthy, because it's letting us know that there is a problem. We're not approaching it from that perspective. And so oftentimes these piecemeal methods are not working, right? Because you're high stressed, right? And when you're in a state of stress, when you're in a state of frantic overwhelm, we know that things don't always work the way that they're supposed to work. You might say things that you didn't want to say. You might talk to people that you may not have, been supposing to have these conversations with. You might be pushing people away, right, who may want to support you, but because of your state of angst and anxiety, because of your state of frustration, you might be pushing them away. And you may be hopping from one thing to the other because why? It's not working for me. I tried this out for a couple of weeks or maybe a week or even a few days, and it wasn't working for me. So I stopped. And so I tried something else, and I tried doing this, but I didn't really like how, my body responded to it, or I didn't see anything happen to it, or it was just too complicated for me to continue. So I'm just going to try something else again. And so you just hop, 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 right? And this is not the solution. to the answer to your needs, right? Because when you're dealing with a level of dysfunction, when you're dealing with infertility, or when you're dealing with illness in the body, it's important to understand that the body needs time to step into a new rhythm, to receive new information, to recalibrate itself, to learn the new methods and habits that you're teaching it, to be able to enter into that rhythm automatically and voluntarily, and then function from there, right? And so if you're functioning, if you're approaching this from a state of stress, from a state of frantic, desire to get something done, it doesn't usually work. Like when you look back on projects that you may have engaged yourself in, when you look at, things that you did from a place of not being calm and poised, right? From a place of feeling doubt, from a place of rushing. I know for myself, I look back on some stuff and I could just, put my face in my palm, like that wasn't the way to do it. It wasn't healthy for you. It wasn't healthy for the persons involved. It wasn't healthy for the situation. You could have done better, right? So when you're looking at a strategy, when you're trying to create a strategy, you really have to settle back and say to yourself, okay, so what is a healthy response to dysfunction, right? And a healthy response to dysfunction does not include frantic stress. It doesn't include waving your hands and flailing all over the place. Although I understand where that's coming from based off of the desire that you have, right? Because the process of pregnancy already in itself takes 9 months, right? And spontaneous pregnancy doesn't necessarily happen for everyone right away. And let's just kind of put this out there too. Your issue of infertility isn't always an issue of you, the woman. Sometimes it's an issue of your partner. It could be an issue of the quality of his sperm. It could be an issue that, the motility, the way that the sperm is moving it's not well, like he could have a low sperm count. There can be a lot of different things. And so if you're working through dysfunction, it's important. And once again, dysfunction is normal if something is not functioning well, if there's an illness, if something needs to be addressed, right? Like if your car starts to go, you're driving and there's the lights come on, it's for a reason. It's like, hey, okay, listen, you need to bring it to the garage, you need to get it fixed. You're not going to drive around and start shouting, my car's not working, my car's not working. You're not going to call everyone and say, oh my God, it's not working, right? So I want to invite you to slow down and recognize that approaching from a place of overwhelm is not necessarily going to bring you the results that you want, right? So what kind of counterintuitive things can you do to increase a level of stability, right? So that we can understand how to function healthily out of the state of dysfunction, right? So if you have arrived at this place, or you have opened your eyes to the revelation of being in this place, of recognizing, okay, like things are not working for me. I've gone to see my primary caregiver. I've, started to, do the research on Dr. Google, and I've found so many counterintuitive things, because one thing we have to understand, especially if you're doing this on your own, right? And I used to DIY things often until I was like, you know what? I just need to hire the people who are going to help me get things done. If you are on Dr. Google is going to give you the information, but Dr. Google is not going to give you the transformation that you're looking for. So when you can put this in your mind, this helps you to better understand why and how that piecemealing, things together isn't necessarily giving you the results that you want. You may get some results, but you may not get the actual end result that you're looking for, right? So the first thing that you should stop doing is doing it because everyone says that you should do it. Not everything works for you, right? Like I can tell you, and I think I explained this in my last live, where I was explaining to you the example of a cold, right? If you have a cold and I have a cold, our colds may be showing up differently in our body. And whereas I might have told you that I used ginger and turmeric drink and it worked really well for me, you may not need a ginger and turmeric drink. You may actually need golden seal, echinacea, and a big shot of chlorophyll, right? Because the cold can be showing up differently. The cold can be manifesting in our bodies differently, right? If I have a dark green mucus and you have a light, clear mucus, we both have a cold and we both have a flu, but we both don't have the same symptoms. It's not showing up the same way. So, your friend is coming to you and saying to you, try black seed. Your friend is coming to you and saying to you, try sea moss. Your friend is coming to you and saying, try red raspberry. These things do work for some people, but for different things, right? And we have to understand that herbs specifically have multifunctions, right? And so whereas they might do something well for one person in this particular case, and if you read up on it and it says, well, it does really well, it works really well for this particular situation, but I've been using it and I'm not seeing the results, this can be a reason why. Like, you're not using it in the right context. So just because somebody told you to do it doesn't mean that it's the right thing for you to do. So you've got to understand this. You have to do it because you intuitively feel as though you should do it. Because that's the other thing, right? When you're in a state of overwhelm and when you're in a state of being stressed and when you're frantic, you might decide to do things out of that space. And that has never helped anyone in history ever. If you're unable to slow yourself down in a state of dysfunction to understand how you can create a healthy response, then you're not going to be able to intuitively connect to what your body needs, because your body will always tell you what it needs. And what do I mean by that? Example, I remember, I don't think it's TMI, but it's about me, so it's okay. But I remember when I was pregnant with my second child, I had specific cravings. I had really, really, really specific cravings. And one thing that I wanted to eat all the time was cucumber. Like, I really wanted cucumber. Like, we would buy these big, long French cucumbers, and I would just be eating them like it was the lick. That was what I wanted. During the pregnancy, I ended up finding out that my son, I was pregnant with my son at the time, that he actually had an issue with one of his kidneys that was developing. And then when I did some more research, one of the things that were very helpful for the kidneys were cucumbers. And I remember saying to myself, that was really interesting. I automatically just started leaning towards things that my body wanted. Like, I gave myself permission to eat the things that my body wanted. And it turns out that that's exactly what my body needed. Give thanks for that, love. It turns out that's exactly what my body needed to be able to support my pregnancy or guide me in the direction to be able to give my son a better chance of developing the kidney. In the end, like, he was fine. He came out. He's okay. He's a champ. His kidneys are fine. He's doing okay, right? I wanted to put that there, because if you start feeling, like, oh, well, I want to start drinking this kind of tea, or I feel like I want to start eating porridge, or, I'm leaning towards this, I'm getting cravings for this, like, really ask yourself, where is that desire to eat coming from, right? Where is that need or that desire coming from? And oftentimes we get these inclinations because that's exactly what the body needs, right? So do something because you can feel the shift or you feel as though you intuitively need it, okay? You have to trust what your body needs. We are walking around, well, most of society is walking around with our heads in, like, just separated from our bodies. Like, we spend so much time in our intellect, not even in the mind, because the mind is a higher functioning aspect of the intellect, of the logical intellect. So I'm not even talking about the mind. I'm talking about the logical intellect. Most people are functioning from that space, of what I want to do, what I think I want, what I think I need, what I've been told to think, how everyone else is working around me. And you aren't necessarily coming from a perspective of what does my body need. Like, you can go ahead, you can give me hearts and let me know, or you can tap in the comments and let me know, like, is that something that you do? Do you pay attention to what your body needs? Do you actually ask yourself these questions before you actually eat something, before you move on, right, to do something different? Like, when you're going to stop an activity, or if you're going to begin an activity, do you ever ask yourself, what does my body need? Is this something that is great and good for my body? That's one thing that all of my clients have said they have started to do once they've walked through the incubator with me, is asking themselves, like, is this really something that my body needs? Is this going to help me, or is this going to put me further into detriment? And the reason why it's important to ask that is because the body communicates with you. I talk often about body wisdom. It has a wisdom of its own. When we know this, if you go into a coma, and you can live in a coma for years, the body is still going to function. It's going to need its hydration. It's going to need its nutrition. It's going to urinate. It's going to defecate. The body will function on its own. And if something is wrong with it, it's going to let you know by way of pain, by way of constipation, by way of fatigue, by way of stressing you out, whatever it is, it's not going to function in the way that you want it to. So by paying attention to that, take more time to feel what you need, to feel into what it is that you need. And don't always move forward from that logical space, because that logical space in a state of urgency becomes very frantic. It becomes filled with anxiety, right? And it creates way more stress than is needed. Right? So I'm just looking at my notes here. One of the other things I want to connect with as well is when you're in that space of frantic, needing to get it done, especially if you're, trying to conceive, having sex in a frantic state is not fun. It is not fun. Okay, let's go. I'm ovulating. We got to do this now. It becomes a chore. It becomes something that has to get done. You're not creating for the joy of creating it. You're creating now for the need to feel validated, for the need to have your body do what it is that you want it to do. You aren't approaching it necessarily from that space of loving space, time, altruistic experience of divine creative. We could go on for days about what this is. I mean, because sex is so many different things. It's very, very pleasurable. But there are so many, meta reasons, and meta experiences that we have, right? I've got my children coming in from outside, in case you hear them loud and proud in here. So ask yourself, in this state of dysfunction and the things that I'm engaging in, do I feel safe? Do I feel safe with the options that I've been presented with? Are my primary health caregivers giving me options that I feel safe doing, following? Are my primary caregivers, helping me out? Do I feel heard by them? Do I feel justified by them? Do I feel comforted by them? Do I feel nurtured by them? And it's very important for you. Your state of mind, your peace of mind is important. If you've been working with someone or a team of people where you don't feel validated, where you feel as though you're being brushed off, then this is not going to add to your situation. This is actually going to take away from you that whole experience of, because trying to conceive, especially if you're going to clinics, especially if you have to, do work through IVF or IUI or whatever procedure that you're going to be put through, having someone who is not hearing you, who is not seeing you, adds more pressure onto the circumstance. And this is a very vulnerable time in your life. Right? So you need to know that you feel safe. And if you don't feel safe, you need to know that you have every right to ask them for a second opinion. You have every right to ask for a new caregiver, a new clinic, You have every right to move on and move forward, right? Because it's your right. You need to feel heard. Because functioning from a state of dysfunction, functioning within a state of dysfunction and not feeling heard, it's like talking to somebody underwater. It's like trying to run really fast underwater with an anvil or some kind of a heavy weight on you. We don't want that for you. And we don't want that for your experience, right? And once again, just going back to these choices that you're making, what kind of choices are you making? Who is giving you these choices and do you trust them, right? And are these people qualified, right? Because there are many, many people there are many, many people who are doing similar work or doing this kind of work, right? Who have not had a lot of experience. And I'm just going to put this out there because this is the truth. I have been doing this work for 20 years. I have gone through thousands of hours of training, and I have had many, many teachers and many mentors. Some of my teachers I've been with for upwards of 10 years, right? Like, I'm very, very passionate about this work, and I make it a point to do research and be very thorough with my clients. Now, in the women's movement, in this women's health movement, there are some things that are very easily accessible. There are a lot of, kinds of medicine that are accessible. Herbs are becoming more famous, and things like vaginal steaming are becoming more famous. But there are people who really, really, really don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing. And, after they've Googled the one or two herbs for you to use, they're going to tell you to use it, and you're going to use it and then wonder why it's not working. I've had people come to me and ask me, about yoni steaming. And so I listened to them. Well, I contacted this woman and she told me that, I should just be steaming once a month. Okay. Why did she tell you that you should be steaming once a month? There's nothing wrong with steaming once a month, but why? And what herbs did she suggest for you to use? Well, she suggested these herbs. Okay, why did she suggest those herbs for you? Right? Because those herbs are very generic herbs that you can find anywhere. Is it specific to your condition? Right? Because as I mentioned earlier on, we can use all these things, right? And we can get some kind of movement on the needle. We can get results from them, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's doing the work. So if you are going to someone who is not certified, right, who has knowledge on something, you have to vet them. How long have they been doing this? What kind of results have they had? What are the people who have taken their services saying? What are other professionals saying about them? You need to feel safe. How do you feel when you're approaching these people and when you're working with them? Because coming from a place of dysfunction and being in that state and feeling frantic and stressed out and high anxiety, you don't want to fall for anything. So you need to do your due diligence. You need to feel safe. You need to feel nurtured. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with finding alternative healthcare practitioners. I am a healthcare practitioner. I am an alternative healthcare practitioner as well, right? And so you need to know that you feel safe when you're doing this because you're in a vulnerable space. And so the other question that you want to ask yourself as you're learning how to create a healthy response to your infertility, to your fertility issues, or to your state of illness is, do I feel reflected in the work that this healthcare giver or practitioner is offering, right? I'm a Black woman. I'm melanated. I'm darkly pigmented. I have a different experience of life than someone who is not. I have a different experience of life from my friend who is German. I have a different experience of life than my colleague who is South Asian, right? When I go to the doctor, I know for a fact that they are looking at me differently, depending on what the circumstances are, right? I know for a fact that when I know that my iron levels are low, my iron levels are not the same level as what a white woman's iron levels are going to be at. I know for a fact that there are race corrections that happen within medicine. And this means that there are certain changes. I have the word alterations and altercations. I don't know. I'm not finding all of my vocabulary today, but I know for a fact that there are things that, or there are medications that will be given at different levels based off of the origin of your culture, of your race. So are you being reflected? Are your healthcare providers aware of this, right? Do they know what's going on? No, I do not, receive vitamin D immediately from the sun. And why is that? Because the skin, the melanated pigmentation in my skin stops it from coming in right away. So I have to apply a different level of knowledge to me getting my levels of vitamin D. I had a conversation, I think I mentioned this as well too, with a healthcare, with a surgeon, and I was talking with her about vitamin D and its importance, and she was like, vitamin D is not important for reproductive health. And once again, I was like, oh man, we need to move on. Vitamin D is an incredibly important hormone. And as a woman of color, as a Black woman, it is crazy important that I get it into my body. Very important, intrinsically important that I get it into my body. And if my health caregiver is telling me that it's not important for me, I am not reflected in her practice. I am not reflected in her clinic. And that's important for me to recognize, and that's important for me to act upon. Do they know your struggle? Do they know that every single time you consider getting a needle or a vaccination or any kind of testing or any kind of, let me be, your guinea pig? For me, I think of the Tuskegee Experiment. Legit. Are you aware that I don't trust needles? Are you aware that I'm aware that my people have been used as guinea pigs for many different reasons? For those of you who are not aware of the Tuskegee Experiment, there was a group of Black people in Tuskegee, Oklahoma, and they were told that they were going to be given free healthcare, and instead they were injected with syphilis, and they were left unmedicated, untreated, for years, being followed to find out how this is going to work for them. Am I being reflected when I go to see my primary health caregiver? I do have a primary caregiver who I have my conversations with, and she listens to me. She asks me questions. I come to her with my concerns, and she asks me questions about my concerns, and she listens to me. Right. And if I'm asking her to do specific testing, if I'm asking her, for, a reference, a referral to another caregiver, she doesn't doubt me. Right. She's a woman of color. She's a South Asian woman. Whereas I have had other primary caregivers who were white. And I've had the same conversations with them, and I've asked them for referrals and they've not given them to me. I've asked them for tests, and these primary caregivers have denied me the test. And I've had to tell them, well, I need you to write it down in my file that you have denied me the chance of getting this testing done. And they don't want to write it down that they've denied you, because if something happens, then they are held responsible. You know what she did? She gave me the test that I asked for. And you know what happened? Whatever I was suspecting was wrong was actually wrong. I was right. This is important. I'm not just speaking from hearsay. I'm speaking to you from experience. So if you're going to see someone, if you are working with a fertility clinic, if you're working with a fertility specialist, if you're working with a natural health caregiver, if you're working with someone and you don't feel reflected in the work that they're doing, if you don't feel heard in the work that they're doing with you in your vulnerable state of dysfunction, you're not helping yourself and you're not doing them a favor. It's their job to teach you. It's their job to work with you. It's their job to hear you and answer your questions. I asked my white doctor if I can have certain tests done. I asked her more than once, on more than one occasion, at more than one appointment. This is years ago. And she told me, no, I don't need it. And I insisted. And then I said to her, well, you need to document it. And then she gave me the test. And it turns out that my suspicions were right. And you know what she did? She brushed it off. I left her. Quick fast, vite fait. No, we let that go. So this is important for you. This is extremely important for you to know this, okay? So you need to consider that every time you are approaching your health, that you are inquiring from a place of empowerment. What do you need to do to feel empowered? Do you know about your condition? Are you aware about exactly what's happening to you? Has your primary caregiver given you enough information that you feel adequately informed when you go home? Did you go and find books or go, on the medical scientific websites and do the data and the research to understand what's happening? This might sound like boring stuff, and you might be saying, like, I don't have the time to do this. That's fine if you don't feel as though you have the time to do this, but it's so important that if you are going through something and you want to be proactive in whatever it is that you're doing, you have to do the research and you have to know what you're up against, because everyone else knows your body except for you. And I can tell you, I don't like that feeling. I don't like that feeling. And I encourage every single one of my clients who come into my cipher, as soon as you step into my container of care, as soon as you step into my incubator of care, the first thing I'm going to tell you to do is to get to know your body. Whether your body is functioning in the way that you want it to, or your body is just doing all kind of abzonky, wonky things, and it's just not working for you. So you're trying to hit it to get it to, you try to hit something to make it work. That's okay. But you got to understand what's happening. Why are you hitting your head? Why? Because your hypothalamus and your pituitary are not working properly. Okay. You've got to inquire from a place of empowerment. And you've got to move from a place of empowerment, because being frantic and being high stress and being anxious, these things are normal, but they don't help. It doesn't help. It creates so much static around you that it actually starts to repel things from you. And creativity is such a beautiful process. You don't want to create from a place of stress. You don't want to, because then it becomes a state of obsessive compulsive, maybe not disorder, but it becomes a state of being in, constant, obsession with what's going on around you. Your body is working hard for you every single day. Hi, please don't do that, okay? Please don't do that, okay? Thank you. I don't know if I'm going to win this one, guys. But your body is working really hard for you every single day. And so even if, Kidane, please, thank you. So even if you're living and you're existing within this state of function, why is this happening to me? This is always happening to me. I can't seem to make it work. It's not working for me. You're still here. You're still breathing. You're still functioning. You're still walking. You're still talking. You can eat. You can go to the bathroom. You're breathing. You're doing what you have to do, because your body is working hard for you every single day. So if you know that you are in a place that you need help, I invite you to have that conversation with me. Right now, what I'm offering my clients, I've created a 6-month incubator. We actually started off with 3 months. I started it off with 3 months, but we recognize that there's a certain level of extended care that one needs to have, especially if you're dealing with chronic illnesses. Now, I created this 6-month container because, I'm getting a call. I created this 6-month container because I think it's really important for women to be able to spend the time that they need without feeling rushed, walking through the process of undoing whatever kinds of tensions you have within your wellness pastiche, right? The body needs at least 100 days for a new follicle to be created. I have, some of my clients who I worked with months ago who, were doing the work, but half engaged and not quite, doing what they're supposed to do. After the 3 months, they came back and were like, oh my gosh, these things are starting to happen. It's like, yes, you need at least 3 months of doing the work. If you start today, the period that you're going to have, we're in May, June, July, August. The menstrual cycle that you're going to have in August is a result of the work that you did today in May. If we work together in January, right, and you have a menstrual cycle, ideally you have your menstrual cycles, but let's say you didn't have a menstrual cycle and we're working together in January, by the time we get to March, that first cycle that you have in March is a result of the work that we did in January. Okay. Okay. All right. Right. So you've got to know what you're working with and why you're working with this. So within the container, I started off at 3 months, but then I realized that some clients and some people need more time. So we created the 6-month container. And within this incubator, we walk through all of the different tools, tips, tricks that are needed, protocols that are proven, therapies that have been scientifically documented, that are going to help you increase your chances of infertility, that are going to help you to bring more equilibrium and stability to your system as a whole, mind, body, soul, and womb. So if this is something that you're interested in, please feel free to hop into my DMs. You can message me, or you can apply for a suitability call. Yes, my dear. Yes, you're going to wait. Let me finish. And then I'm going to get you. Okay. You can go ahead and you can hop into my DMs, or you can book a suitability call with me, and we can have that discussion. Hey, sweetie, thank you for joining. We can have that discussion about where you are and what your goals are, and specifically talk about the gaps, right? Like where you are and where you want to be and what that gap is, because oftentimes that's what we're not looking at. We're so focused on where we want to go, and we don't know the steps that we have to take, or we're completely unaware of where we are. So I'm going to leave this here because my son, my youngest one, he wants his apple. So I'm going to get this for him. But I really want to remind you that your body is working hard for you every single day. And as long as you start the process of creating an environment that will allow it to step into its natural rhythm, this is what's going to get you to where you need to go. And so if you need to create more functioning systems, if you need to learn how to overcome dysfunction and create a healthy response to your fertility issues, please make sure and connect with me. I would love to have that conversation with you. So I wish you all a beautiful day. It is so warm here. I was outside in the garden today and yesterday planting. What did I plant? I planted collard greens and red callaloo. I planted lettuce and tomatoes, and we planted basil, just doing all the things. So I'm going to try to get outside again and get some nice weather before something happens and, you know, it hails. I don't know. We don't know what's happening with the weather these days. But anyways, y'all, take care, be well, and I will talk with you again soon. Bye-bye.